My name is Margaret Chun, and I'm 68 years old. 3 years ago, I lost my husband Robert to cancer. We were married for 42 years, and every single day without him feels like walking through fog. But I'm not here to talk about my grief today. I'm here to tell you about the day I almost lost everything we built together: our home, our legacy, our dreams. And I'm here to tell you who tried to take it all from me. Robert and I bought this house when we were newlyweds in 1982. It was a small, run-down place in a quiet neighborhood. We spent weekends painting walls, fixing the roof, planting the garden. Every corner of this house holds a memory. The kitchen where we cooked Sunday dinners, the living room where we watched our son David grow up, the bedroom where Robert took his last breath while I held his hand. This house isn't just bricks and wood to me. It's my entire life, wrapped in 4 walls. After Robert passed, I felt lost. David was my only child, and he lived 2 hours away with his wife, Jessica. They'd been married for 5 years when Robert died. Jessica seemed nice enough at first, polite, always smiling, calling me mom with that sweet voice. I wanted to love her. I wanted to believe my son had found a good woman, but something always felt off about Jessica. She was too interested in things that didn't concern her: my finances, my house, my will. At family dinners, while David talked about his job at the accounting firm, Jessica would steer conversations toward my assets. "Mom, have you thought about updating your will?" she'd ask, touching my hand gently. "You should really have everything in order. Just in case." Just in case of what? I wasn't planning on dying anytime soon, but she made it sound so caring, so thoughtful. I brushed off the uncomfortable feeling in my stomach. Maybe I was being paranoid. Maybe grief was making me suspicious of everyone. After Robert's funeral, Jessica started visiting more, often always alone, always with papers. "I'm just helping you organize, Mom," she'd say, spreading documents across my kitchen table. "These medical bills, the insurance forms, the property tax eats so much for you to handle alone." She'd pat my shoulder, and I'd feel guilty for doubting her intentions. Here was my daughter-in-law, taking time out of her busy life to help a grieving widow. I should have been grateful, so I let her help. I let her into my files, my personal documents, my life. I signed papers she put in front of me, trusting that she had my best interests at heart. She was family, after all. She was married to my son. Why would she hurt me? Looking back now, I see every red flag I ignored. The way her eyes lit up when she talked about the house's value. How she'd walk through rooms, measuring with her eyes, calculating. The questions about whether I'd ever considered selling, moving to somewhere smaller, easier to maintain. I told her no, firmly. This was my home. I would die here, just like Robert did. Jessica smiled when I said that, but her smile didn't reach her eyes. I remember thinking it looked almost disappointed, but I pushed that thought away, scolding myself for being unfair. She was just concerned about me, an old woman living alone in a big house. That's what I told myself. That's what I wanted to believe. I had no idea that behind that concerned smile, behind those helpful gestures, Jessica was planning something that would nearly destroy me. I had no idea that the papers I was signing, the trust I was giving, would become weapons used against me. I had no idea that within months I'd be fighting for my home, my dignity, and my very survival. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you how it all fell apart piece by piece, until I was standing in a courtroom fighting for everything I had left. Have you ever trusted someone completely, only to discover they had hidden intentions? Share your story in the comments below. Sometimes, the people closest to us are the ones we need to watch most carefully. The signs were there. I just didn't want to see them. It started small. So small that I convinced myself I was imagining things. Jessica would show up unannounced on Tuesday afternoons, always with that bright smile and a folder of papers tucked under her arm. "Just checking in on you, Mom," she'd say, letting herself in with the spare key I'd given her. At first, I appreciated the company. The house felt so empty without Robert. The silence was suffocating. But then I noticed a pattern. Stasika never came just to visit. She always had an agenda. "Mom, I was reviewing your property tax statements," she'd begin, spreading papers across my dining table like she owned the place. "You're paying too much. We should look into reassessment." Or, "Mom, your homeowner's insurance is outdated. Let me help you update it." Or, "Mom, have you thought about setting up a trust? It would make things so much easier for David when the time comes. When the time comes." She said it so casually, like she was already planning my funeral. I'd feel that twist in my stomach again, that warning voice whispering that something wasn't right. But then Jessica would squeeze my hand, look at me with those concerned eyes, and I'd feel ashamed. Here I was, a lonely old widow, suspicious of the one person who seemed to care enough to help me navigate the confusing world of paperwork and legal documents. David rarely came with her anymore. "He's so busy at work, Mom," Jessica would explain. "But he sends his love. He worries about you, you know? We both do." Then she'd pause, letting that sink in. "That's why I'm here. To make sure you're taken care of." One Tuesday in late September, Jessica arrived with a new folder thicker than usual. "Mom, I need you to look at these documents," she said, her voice unusually serious. She spread them out on the table, forms with tiny print, legal language I couldn't understand. "It's about refinancing the house. Interest rates are at an all-time low. You could save thousands of dollars annually." I frowned, confused. "But Robert and I paid off the mortgage 15 years ago. There's nothing to refinance." Jessica's smile tightened. "Not a mortgage, Mom. A home equity line of credit. You're sitting on so much value in this house, over $600,000, according to recent appraisals. You could access that money, use it for medical expenses, emergencies, whatever you need." "I don't need money," I said firmly. "I have Robert's pension and my Social Security. I'm fine, for now," Jessica said, and something in her tone made my blood run cold. "But what about later? What if you get sick? What if you need full-time care? These things cost money, Mom, a lot of money." She pushed a pen toward me. "Just sign here, here, and here. I'll handle everything else. You won't have to worry about a thing." I picked up the pen, then hesitated. The documents were so dense, so complicated. "Can I have my lawyer review these first?" Jessica's face changed. Just for a second, a flash of something ugly crossed her features before the sweet mask slipped back into place. "Of course you can, Mom, but lawyers charge by the hour, and this is pretty straightforward. I wouldn't ask you to sign anything that wasn't in your best interest. You trust me, don't you?" That question hung in the air between us. "You trust me, don't you?" How could I say no? She was my son's wife. She was family. And yet, "I need time to think about it," I said, setting down the pen. Jessica's jaw clenched. She gathered the papers quickly, shoving them back into the folder. "Of course, Mom. Take all the time you need." Her voice was pleasant, but her eyes were ice. "I just hope you're not making a mistake. These opportunities don't last forever." She left without her usual goodbye hug. I stood at the window watching her drive away, and for the first time, I let myself acknowledge what I'd been feeling all along: fear. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Jessica's face when I refused to sign, the way her mask had slipped. I got up and went to my filing cabinet where I kept all my important documents. I wanted to see what papers I had signed in the past months. The folder where I kept property documents seemed thinner than I remembered. I flipped through it, my hands trembling. Some papers were missing, papers I was sure had been there. Had I moved them? Had I forgotten? Or had Jessica? No, I couldn't think like that. I was being paranoid, letting grief and loneliness make me suspicious. Jessica was helping me. She cared about me. She wouldn't. But deep down, in a place I didn't want to acknowledge, I knew. I knew something terrible was happening. I just didn't know how terrible it would become. Have you ever ignored warning signs because you didn't want to believe someone you loved could hurt you? Drop a comment below. Sometimes our instincts know the truth before our hearts are ready to accept it. November brought cold winds and an illness I couldn't shake. It started as a scratchy throat, then evolved into a full-blown flu. I spent 3 days in bed, shivering under blankets, barely able to lift my head from the pillow. I didn't call David. I didn't want to worry him. I'd survived worse. I just needed rest. On the 4th day, around 2 in the afternoon, I heard the front door open. "Mom? Are you home?" Jessica's voice echoed through the house. I heard her footsteps climbing the stairs, quick and purposeful. She appeared in my bedroom doorway, and I must have looked terrible because her eyes widened. "Oh my God, Mom, you look awful. Why didn't you call us?" She pressed her hand to my forehead. "You're burning up. Have you eaten anything?" I shook my head weakly. Speaking felt like swallowing glass. "Let me make you some soup," she said, already turning toward the door. "But first, Mom, I need you to sign something. It's urgent. Really urgent." Through my fever haze, I tried to focus. What is it? Jessica pulled papers from her oversized purse. That purse. Always those papers. It's the homeowner's insurance renewal. I told you about it last month, remember? The policy expires tomorrow, and if we don't submit this today, you'll lose coverage. The house will be uninsured. Fear cut through my fever fog. Robert had always been obsessive about insurance. "The house can't be uninsured," he'd say. "That's how people lose everything." I couldn't let that happen. Not to our house. I can't read right now," I mumbled, my vision blurring. The words on the paper swam like black fish in a white ocean. "You don't need to read it, Mom. It's just a standard renewal. Same coverage, same company, same everything. I've reviewed every word. You just need to sign here, here, and here." She placed a pen in my trembling hand, guiding it to 3 different spots marked with yellow sticky tabs. My head was pounding. The room felt like it was spinning. All I could think was, the house needs insurance. Robert would want the house insured. Sign the papers. Protect the house. I signed. 3 times. My signature looked shaky, barely legible. My hand felt like it weighed 100 pounds. "Perfect," Jessica said, snatching the papers away quickly. She didn't even wait for the ink to dry. "I'll get these submitted right away. You rest now, Mom. I'll bring you that soup." But she never came back with soup. I heard her footsteps rushing down the stairs, heard the front door slam, heard her car engine start. She was gone in less than 5 minutes. I lay there in my fevered state, feeling uneasy. Something about the whole interaction felt wrong, but I couldn't put my finger on what. The insurance needed to be renewed. She was helping me. So why did I feel like I'd just made a terrible mistake? The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of illness and recovery. David called once to check on me. Jessica had told him I was sick. "Why didn't you call me, Mom?" he asked, sounding hurt. "Jessica was helping me," I said. She came by with the insurance papers. There was a pause on the other end. "What? Insurance papers?" "The homeowner's insurance renewal." She said it was expiring. Another pause, longer this time. "Mom, your insurance doesn't expire until March. I helped you renew it last year, remember? It's a 12-month policy." My blood turned to ice. "What? Your insurance isn't up for renewal until March," David repeated. "Are you sure that's what Jessica said?" I couldn't speak. My mind was racing backward, trying to remember exactly what Jessica had told me. Had she said renewal? Or had I assumed? What had I actually signed? Mom, are you there? I need to go, I whispered and hung up. I got out of bed on shaky legs and went to my filing cabinet. My fingers fumbled through the folders, searching for insurance documents, for anything Jessica might have given me. Nothing. She'd taken everything with her that day. I stood there in my study, Robert's old desk behind me, his reading glasses still sitting where he'd left them 3 years ago. I could almost hear his voice. "Margaret, what did you sign?" I didn't know, and that terrified me more than anything. 3 weeks later, on a cold Monday morning in early December, the mail carrier handed me a thick envelope. It was from a law firm I'd never heard of, Blackwell and Associates, real estate attorneys. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside was a letter, typed on expensive letterhead, with words that would change my life forever. Dear Mrs. Chun. This letter serves as official notification regarding the pending transfer of property located at 847 Maple Drive. I had to read it 3 times before my brain could process what it said. My house, my home, the place where Robert and I had built our entire life was being sold. The closing date was set for January 15th, 43 days away. And according to these lawyers, I was the one who had authorized it. I stood in my kitchen, that letter trembling in my hands, reading it over and over until the words blurred together. Pending transfer of property, lawful sale. Closing date, January 15th. Contact our office with questions, double. Quotes, this had to be a mistake. A terrible, horrible mistake. I hadn't sold my house. I would never sell my house. This was where Robert died, where David grew up, where every memory I cherished lived in the walls and floors and ceilings. Someone had made an error, mixed up addresses, sent the wrong letter to the wrong person. I grabbed the phone with shaking hands and dialed the number on the letterhead. A receptionist answered on the 3rd ring. Blackwell and Associates, how may I direct your call? My name is Margaret Chun, I said, my voice cracking. I received a letter about a property sale, but there's been a mistake. I never. One moment, please. Let me transfer you to Mr. Blackwell's assistant. The hold music was classical pianos, something that might have been Chopin. It felt obscene, listening to beautiful music while my world was falling apart. After what felt like hours, but was probably 2 minutes, a woman's crisp voice came on the line. Mrs. Chun, thank you for calling. I'm Sharon, Mr. Blackwell's paralegal. You're calling regarding 847 Maple Drive, correct? Yes, but there's been a mistake. I never authorized any sale. I never, Mrs. Chun, Sharon interrupted gently. I have your file right here. You signed the deed transfer documents on November 8th. The word notarized by Jessica Chun, who is listed as your power of attorney for property matters. The sale was initiated by Mrs. Jessica Chun on your behalf, and the buyer has already submitted earnest money. We are scheduled to close on January 15th. The room tilted. I grabbed the kitchen counter to steady myself. Jessica is not my power of attorney. I never gave her power of attorney. And I certainly never signed any deed transfer. Sharon's voice became cautious. Mrs. Chun, I'm looking at the documents right now. Your signature is on every page. Are you saying you don't remember signing these documents? I'm not saying I don't remember. I'm saying I never signed them. My voice rose to a shout. I never shouted, but terror was flooding through me like ice water in my veins. There was a long pause. Mrs. Chun, are you currently under medical care? Is there someone there with you? A family member, perhaps? And then I understood. She thought I was senile, confused, a forgetful old woman who signed papers and couldn't remember doing it. I am 78 years old, not incompetent, I said, forcing my voice to stay steady. I did not sign those documents. I need to see them immediately. I'll need to speak with Mr. Blackwell about that, Sharon said carefully. Perhaps you should contact Mrs. Jessica Chun. as she's the one who initiated this transaction on your behalf. I'm sure she can clear up any confusion. Jessica is the one creating the confusion. I wanted to scream, but Sharon had already moved into professional closing mode. Mr. Blackwell will call you back within 24 hours. In the meantime, Mrs. Chun, I strongly suggest you speak with your family. Have a good day. The line went dead. I stood there holding the phone, my heart hammering so hard I thought I might collapse. Jessica had done this. Jessica had forged my signature, had she? That day I was sick, burning with fever. When she'd rushed in with papers she said were insurance documents. Had those been deed transfer papers? Had I been so delirious that I'd signed away my house without knowing it? No, I couldn't have. I would never sign papers transferring my house to anyone, no matter how sick I was. But the paralegal said my signature was on every page. How was that possible unless Jessica had forged it? Unless she'd traced my signature from other documents? Unless everything, the helpful visits, the concern about my finances, the urgent papers during my illness, had all been part of a plan to steal my home? My legs gave out. I sank into a kitchen chair, the same chair where I'd sat with Robert for 40 years, drinking morning coffee and planning our days. The same chair where Jessica had spread her papers, week after week, gaining my trust while plotting my destruction. I needed to call David. I needed to tell him what his wife had done. But even as I reached for the phone, doubt crept in. Would he believe me? Would he think his mother was confused, paranoid, maybe showing signs of dementia? Jessica could be very convincing. And I was just a grieving widow who'd signed papers while sick with the flu. I called anyway. It rang 4 times before David answered. Mom? Is everything okay? David, I need you to come over right away. It's about Jessica. It's about the house. Something terrible has happened. Mom, slow down. What's wrong? Jessica, my voice broke. Jessica is trying to steal the house. She forged documents. Or she tricked me, or I don't know exactly what happened, but lawyers just sent me a letter saying my house is being sold. David, I never sold the house. I would never sell this house. There was silence on the other end. Long, terrible silence. David, did you hear me? Mom, ... double quotes. His voice was careful, the way you'd speak to someone fragile. Jessica mentioned you'd been confused lately. She said you've been forgetting things, repeating yourself. I am not confused. The words exploded out of me. Your wife is stealing my house. She forged my signature. Or Mom, please. Let me talk to Jessica first, okay? I'm sure there's an explanation. Maybe she was trying to help you with something and there was a miscommunication. Jessica wouldn't. She would never. She would, David. She is. Why won't you believe me? Another long silence. When David spoke again, his voice was strained. I'll come over tomorrow. We'll sort this out together. But Mom... Promise me you'll calm down. Getting worked up like this isn't good for you. He thought I was losing my mind. My own son thought his wife's lies were more credible than his mother's truth. Fine, I whispered. Come tomorrow. I hung up and sat in my kitchen as darkness fell, too numb to turn on the lights. 43 days. That's all I had left before everything Robert and I built would be gone, sold to strangers, lost forever. And the person who'd done this to me was married to my son. Have you ever tried to warn someone about a toxic person in their life only to be dismissed or not believed? Share your experience below. Sometimes the truth is the hardest thing for people to accept. David arrived at 10 o'clock the next morning. Jessica was with him. I watched through the window as they got out of the car together. Jessica's hand was on David's arm, her head tilted toward him, whispering something. Even from a distance, I could see the concern etched on my son's face, concern for me, the confused old mother who was making wild accusations. They came to the door together. David hugged me, but it felt stiff, obligatory. Jessica stood behind him, her face arranged in an expression of caring worry. "Mom," she said softly, "we're so concerned about you." "Sit down," I said, my voice harder than I'd ever used with my son. "Both of you, we need to talk about what you've done, Jessica." We sat in the living room, the room where David had opened Christmas presents as a child, where Robert and I had hosted countless family dinners. Now, it felt like a courtroom, and I was both the accused and the victim. I placed the letter from Blackwell and Associates on the coffee table. "Explain this." Jessica picked it up, her movement slow and deliberate. She read it, then looked up at me with those wide, innocent eyes. "Mom, this is the paperwork I've been trying to help you with for months. Don't you remember our conversations about downsizing? About moving somewhere smaller, easier to manage?" I never agreed to sell the house. My hands clenched into fists. "Mom, you did." Jessica's voice was so gentle, so patient. "You've been saying for months how hard it is to maintain this big house alone. The yard work, the repairs, the property taxes. You told me you felt overwhelmed." "That's a lie, Margaret," Jessica said, using my first name like we were peers instead of mother and daughter-in-law. "I understand this is scary. Change is always frightening, especially at your age. But we're doing this for you, to protect you." The house sold for an excellent price, $620,000. That money will pay for a beautiful assisted living facility where you'll have friends, activities, and 24-hour care. The words hit me like physical blows. Assisted living. She was planning to take my money and lock me away in a facility. I don't need assisted living. I'm perfectly capable of living in my own home. David finally spoke. "Mom, let's all take a breath here." He looked tired, caught between two women he loved. "Jessica, can you give Mom and me a few minutes alone?" Jessica's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, but she stood. "Of course. I'll wait in the car." She touched David's shoulder as she passed. "Take all the time you need." The moment the door closed, I grabbed my son's hands. "David, please. You have to believe me. I never agreed to sell this house." That day, Jessica came when I was sick with the flu. She told me I was signing insurance papers. She rushed in, pushed papers at me while I was burning with fever, and left within 5 minutes. I think those were the deed transfer documents. David pulled his hands away. "Mom, Jessica showed me those insurance papers weeks ago. She was worried about you being underinsured. My insurance doesn't expire until March. You told me that yourself." He rubbed his face, looking pained. "Mom, you're mixing things up. That was a different policy. The umbrella policy. The homeowner's insurance was separate." "No, David, listen to me, Mom, stop." He stood up, his voice rising. "Just stop. Do you know how hard this is for me? My mother is accusing my wife of fraud. My wife is in tears every night because she's trying to help you, and you're treating her like a criminal. Someone is lying here, and I don't want to believe it's either of you, but... ... double quotes. He trailed off, but I heard what he didn't say. He thought it was me. His confused, grieving, possibly senile mother. "Look at me, David," I said, standing to face him. "Look into my eyes. I am your mother. I changed your diapers. I nursed you through chickenpox. I taught you to ride a bike. I held you when your father died. Do you really think I would lie about something this serious? Do you really think I'm so far gone that I'd forget selling my own house?" His eyes filled with tears. "Mom, I don't know what to think. Jessica has been so good to you, spending hours helping with your paperwork, checking on you, worrying about you. Why would she do all that if she was planning to hurt you? Because she wanted access." The words burst out of me. She wanted my trust, my signatures, my documents. She's been planning this for months, maybe years. "David, your wife is a con artist, and I am her mark." "Enough!" David's shout echoed through the room. I won't listen to you talk about Jessica like that. She loves you. She's been nothing but kind and helpful, and this is how you repay her? With paranoid accusations? They're not paranoid if they're true. Are they true, Mom? Or are you confused? Because honestly, a bull. He paused, his voice dropping. Jessica told me you've been forgetful. Leaving the stove on, repeating the same stories, asking the same questions. She's been documenting it because she's worried about you. The room spun. Documenting it? Documenting what? Your cognitive decline. The words were quiet but devastating. She keeps notes. Dates, times, incidents. She showed me last week. She thinks you might have early-stage dementia. I felt like I'd been slapped. Jessica hadn't just been stealing my house, she'd been building a case to prove I was mentally incompetent, and my own son believed her. I don't have dementia, I whispered. Mom, people with dementia don't always know they have it. That's part of the disease. I don't have dementia. Each word was a stone. What I have is a daughter-in-law who's manipulating you, manipulating me, and stealing everything your father and I worked for. And you're letting her do it. David's face hardened. I think Jessica's right. I think you need to see a doctor. We need to have you evaluated. Get out, Mom. Get out of my house. I was screaming now, something I'd never done at my son in his entire life. Get out and take that snake you married with you. David stared at me like I was a stranger. Maybe to him, I was. Maybe Jessica had already poisoned him so thoroughly against me that he couldn't see his own mother anymore. Only the confused old woman she'd painted me to be. I'm sorry you feel this way, he said quietly. I'll call you in a few days when you've calmed down. He left. Through the window, I watched him get into the car where Jessica waited. I saw her put her hand on his face, saw him shake his head, saw her pull him into an embrace. She looked up at the house, looked directly at me, standing in the window, and for just a second, her mask slipped. She smiled. A cold, triumphant smile that said, I've already won. I stood there long after they drove away, alone in the house that had once been filled with love and was now just a tomb of memories. 42 days until closing. 42 days until I lost everything, and my own son was on her side. That night, I didn't sleep. I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Jessica's triumphant smile. I heard David's words. She thinks you might have early-stage dementia. I felt the walls of my house closing in, knowing that in 42 days, they wouldn't be my walls anymore. I sat in Robert's old armchair, wrapped in the afghan his mother had crocheted for us as a wedding gift. The house was silent except for the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hallway, the clock Robert and I had bought at an estate sale 30 years ago. Every object in this house had a story. Every corner held a memory. And Jessica was taking it all away. Around 3 in the morning, I went to my bedroom and pulled out the box I kept under the bed. It was filled with photographs. Robert and me on our wedding day, both of us so young and full of hope. David as a baby, as a toddler, as a gap-toothed 7-year-old holding up a fish he'd caught. Pictures of birthday parties, Christmases, graduations. Our whole life together, captured in fading photographs. I found one picture from 5 years ago, David's wedding. Jessica in her white dress, radiant and beautiful, standing next to my son who looked at her like she hung the moon. I was in the photo too, smiling, happy for them, welcoming her into our family, trusting her. What a fool I'd been. I put the photos away and went to my filing cabinet. I needed to find the documents I'd signed that day in November when I was sick. If I could prove those weren't deed transfers, if I could show they were insurance papers like Jessica claimed, then maybe. But the folder was empty. Jessica had taken everything. I pulled out other folders, searching for anything that might help me. Old tax returns, Robert's death certificate, the original deed to the house from 1982. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the papers. I found the deed and stared at our signatures, mine and Robert's, side by side, both of us swearing we'd love and cherish this property. We'd kept that promise, and now I was losing it. The tears came then, hot and unstoppable. I sat on the floor of my study, surrounded by papers, and sobbed like I hadn't sobbed since Robert died. I cried for my marriage, for my home, for my son who didn't believe me. I cried because I was old and alone and nobody was going to help me. I cried because Jessica had won. Days blurred together. I stopped answering the phone. It was always lawyers or real estate agents or Jessica with her fake concern. Mom, we just want to help you through this transition. I stopped eating much. Food tasted like cardboard. I lost 8 pounds in 2 weeks. Neighbor Dorothy knocked on my door one afternoon. She was 83, lived alone since her husband died a decade ago. We'd been friends for years, sharing coffee and complaints about our aching joints. Margaret, I haven't seen you outside in days, she said when I finally opened the door. Are you all right? I wasn't all right. I would never be all right again. But I nodded anyway. Dorothy pushed past me into the house. You look terrible. When's the last time you ate a proper meal? She went straight to my kitchen, opened the refrigerator, and frowned at the sparse contents. This won't do. I'm making you soup. While she worked, I told her everything. The whole story spilled out: Jessica's visits, the papers I'd signed while sick, the letter from the lawyers, David's refusal to believe me. Dorothy listened without interrupting, her weathered hands chopping vegetables with practiced efficiency. That girl always seemed too sweet, Dorothy said finally. Like artificial sweetener, you know? Cloying. I never trusted her. Why didn't you say something? Would you have listened? Dorothy gave me a knowing look. We never want to believe the worst about our family. She set a bowl of soup in front of me. Now eat. You can't fight on an empty stomach. I'm not fighting, I said dully. There's nothing to fight. Jessica has lawyers, documents, my son on her side. I have nothing. You have the truth. The truth doesn't matter when nobody believes it. Dorothy sat down across from me, her eyes sharp despite their roomy appearance. Margaret Chun, I've known you for 34 years. You survived raising a teenage boy alone while your husband worked double shifts. You nursed Robert through 2 years of cancer without once complaining. You are not the kind of woman who gives up. I'm tired, Dorothy. I'm old and tired, and I just want this to be over. Then let her win. Let her take everything Robert worked for, everything you built together. Let her put you in some facility where they'll feed you mashed food and treat you like a child. Is that what Robert would want? The mention of Robert's name lit something in my chest, a small flame of anger in the midst of all that despair. No, I whispered. What was that? No, that's not what Robert would want. The flame grew stronger. He would want me to fight. Damn right he would. Dorothy squeezed my hand. So, what are you going to do about it? I didn't know. I didn't have money for expensive lawyers. I didn't have my son's support. I didn't have much time. But Dorothy was right. I couldn't just surrender. This house was more than bricks and wood. It was Robert's legacy. It was proof that our life together had mattered. That evening, I went through every document in my filing cabinet again, this time with fresh eyes. I found old checkbooks, tax returns, medical records from the flu that had left me bedridden in November. I documented everything I could remember about Jessica's visits, writing down dates and conversations. It wasn't much, but it was something. I pulled out the letter from Blackwell and Associates and read it again, this time looking for any detail that might help me. That's when I saw it, a small note at the bottom, all signatures verified by notary, public. Jennifer Martinez, license number 8,847,293. A notary had witnessed my signature, but I'd never seen a notary that day. Jessica had come alone, rushed me to sign while I was feverish, and left within minutes. There had been no notary, unless Jessica had forged that too. I called the number on the letterhead first thing the next morning. Sharon, the paralegal, answered. Mrs. Chun, I was just about to call you. Mr. Blackwell would like to schedule a meeting to discuss your concerns. I need to know who notarized those documents, I said. The letter says Jennifer Martinez. I want her contact information. There was a pause. I'm not authorized to give out that information, but I can pass along your request to Mr. Blackwell. Tell Mr. Blackwell that I never saw a notary. Tell him those signatures were forged. Tell him I'm going to prove it, and when I do, everyone involved in this fraud is going to pay. My voice was stronger than it had been in weeks. The flame Dorothy had rekindled was now afire. I'll pass along your message, Sharon said quietly. I hung up and looked around my house, my beautiful, precious house that held 42 years of memories. 40 days left. 40 days to find the truth and stop this theft. I wasn't giving up. Not anymore. I woke up the next morning with purpose for the first time in weeks. The despair hadn't disappeared. It still sat heavy in my chest, but underneath it now burned something stronger. Determination. Jessica thought she'd beaten me. She thought I was just a confused old woman who would fade quietly into whatever assisted living prison she had planned. She was wrong. I made myself real breakfast, not just coffee and toast. Scrambled eggs, the way Robert used to make them. While I ate, I made a list. Robert had always been a list maker. You can't solve a problem until you define it, he'd say. So I defined mine. Problems. 1. Documents signed while I was sick, possibly deed transfers. 2. No copies of what I actually signed. 3. Notary signature on documents I never saw a notary sign for. David believes. Jessica over me 5. 40 days until closing 6. No money for expensive lawyers' assets. 1. The truth 2. My memory of that day fever and all 3. Medical records proving I was sick 4. The name of the notary, Jennifer Martinez. 5. My own signature. I know what it looks like 6. Dorothy, who believes me it wasn't much, but it was more than I'd had yesterday. First, I needed to see those documents. I called Blackwell and Associates again. This time, a man answered. Leonard Blackwell speaking. Mr. Blackwell. This is Margaret Chun. I need to see the deed transfer documents that supposedly have my signature on them. His voice was smooth, professional. Mrs. Chun, I understand you have concerns about the transaction. However, all documents were properly executed and notarized. If you believe there's been an error, I suggest you retain counsel to review the file. I don't have money for expensive lawyers, and you know it. That's why Jessica chose to go through with this fraud, because she thought I couldn't fight back. But I'm fighting back now, Mr. Blackwell. And if you're part of this scheme, you're going to lose your license. There was a long pause. When he spoke again, his tone had changed, less smooth, more cautious. Mrs. Chun, I assure you this firm has done nothing improper. Your daughter-in-law presented all necessary documentation, including power of attorney papers that gave her authority to act on your behalf. I never gave her power of attorney. According to our records, you signed those papers on September 23rd. They were notarized by the same notary public, Jennifer Martinez. September 23rd. I grabbed my calendar, flipping back through the months. September 23rd was a Tuesday, one of Jessica's helpful visits. I'd signed something that day. She'd said it was paperwork for updating my health insurance beneficiaries. Mr. Blackwell, I was told those papers were health insurance documents. I was deliberately deceived about what I was signing. Another pause. That's a serious allegation, Mrs. Chun. Do you have any proof of that claim? I didn't. It was my word against Jessica's, and Jessica had official documents with notarized signatures. I want to see everything, I said. The deed transfer, the power of attorney, every document with my alleged signature. I have a right to see what I supposedly signed. I can arrange that, Blackwell said slowly. Come to my office tomorrow at 2 o'clock. Bring identification. You can review the file, though I can't let you remove any documents. I'll be there. I said, and hung up before he could change his mind. The next challenge was finding out about Jennifer Martinez, the notary. I called the California Secretary of State's office and spent 40 minutes navigating phone menus before reaching a real person. I need to verify a notary public license, I told the clerk. Jennifer Martinez, license number 8,847,293. I heard typing. Yes, that license is active. Issued 3 years ago to Jennifer Marie Martinez, address in Sacramento. Can you tell me if there have been any complaints filed against her? That information isn't public, ma'am. If you believe a notary has acted improperly, you can file a complaint with our office. How do I do that? She walked me through the process. I'd need evidence of wrongdoing, witnesses if possible, and a detailed statement of what happened. I wrote everything down carefully. After I hung up, I sat thinking. Jennifer Martinez was a real notary with an active license. That meant either she was part of Jessica's scheme or Jessica had somehow used her credentials without her knowledge. But how could Jessica forge a notary signature and seal? Unless Jennifer Martinez wasn't innocent. Unless she and Jessica were working together. I needed to talk to this woman. I searched online for Jennifer Martinez in Sacramento and found 17 matches. I started calling them one by one. Most didn't answer. 3 answered but weren't notaries. 1 got angry and hung up on me. On the 10th call, a woman answered, "Hello? Is this Jennifer Martinez, the notary public?" A pause. "Who's asking?" "My name is Margaret Chun. Your signature appears on some documents related to my property, but I never met you. I never saw you notarize anything. And I need to know if you actually witnessed my signature or if someone forged your credentials." The silence on the other end stretched so long, I thought she'd hung up. Then, "I need to call you back." She hung up. My hands were shaking. That reaction meant something. Jennifer Martinez knew something. 20 minutes later, my phone rang. Unknown number. "Mrs. Chun?" It was Jennifer Martinez. "I'm calling from a different phone. Are you recording this?" "No." "Should I be?" "No. Don't." She took a deep breath. "I did notarize documents for you 3 times. But you weren't there." My heart stopped. "What?" "A woman came to me. Your daughter-in-law," she said. "Jessica Chun. She had documents that needed notarizing. She said you were homebound, recovering from surgery, and she had power of attorney to act on your behalf. She showed me POA papers that looked legitimate. She said she was signing on your behalf with your permission." "That's not how power of attorney works," I said, my voice shaking. "Even with POA, she can't forge my signature and have it notarized as mine." "I know that now," Jennifer said miserably, "but I was new to notary work. She seemed so professional, so trustworthy. She paid cash, good money, and I didn't ask enough questions. I stamped documents with her signature, thinking she was authorized to sign for you. I didn't realize until later that what I did was illegal. She tricked me, but I'm still responsible. I could lose my license. I could face criminal charges." "Then help me," I said urgently. "Help me prove what she did. Come forward as a witness. Tell the truth. If I do that, I'm admitting to notary fraud. My career is over. I could go to jail. If you don't, I lose my home. Jessica gets away with stealing everything my husband and I built. And she'll do this to someone else, some other vulnerable old woman. Is that what you want?" Jennifer was crying now. "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. But I can't. I have 2 kids. I can't go to jail. I can't lose my income. I'm sorry." She hung up. I sat there holding the dead phone, a mix of triumph and despair warring inside me. I'd found proof. Jennifer's confession confirmed that the notarization was fraudulent. But without her willing to testify, her confession was useless. It was still just my word against Jessica's official documents. But I'd found a crack in Jessica's armor, and where there was one crack, there might be others. I went to my computer and started researching. I learned about forensic document examination, about handwriting analysis, about how to challenge notarizations. I printed everything I found. At midnight, I was still working, still planning, still fighting. Dorothy was right. This was what Robert would have wanted. Not surrender, not quiet acceptance of theft, but a fight. 39 days until closing. I wasn't going down without a war. The next day, I dressed in my best suit, the navy blue one I'd worn to Robert's funeral. I wanted to look competent, sharp, not like the confused old woman Jessica had painted me to be. At 1:30, I drove to Blackwell & Associates' office in downtown Sacramento. The law firm occupied the 10th floor of a glass tower. Everything was chrome and leather, the kind of place that screamed money. Money I didn't have. I gave my name to the receptionist, a young woman with perfect makeup and a practiced smile. "Mrs. Chun, yes. Mr. Blackwell is expecting you. Please have a seat." I sat in a chair that probably cost more than my monthly pension and waited. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I was about to see the documents that were stealing my life away. After 15 minutes, the receptionist's phone buzzed. "Mrs. Chun? You can go in now. Third door on the left." Leonard Blackwell's office was enormous, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. He stood when I entered, a tall man in his 50s with silver hair and an expensive suit. He extended his hand. "I didn't take it, Mrs. Chun. Thank you for coming in." He gestured to a chair across from his massive desk. "I've pulled your file. I understand you have questions about the transaction." "I have more than questions, Mr. Blackwell. I have accusations. My signature was forged, and I intend to prove it." He sat down, his expression neutral. "That's a serious charge. Before we proceed, I need to make something clear. This firm acted in good faith based on documents presented to us by Mrs. Jessica Chun, who provided valid power of attorney. If there's been fraud, we're victims of it too. Show me the documents." He opened a thick folder and slid papers across the desk. "This is the power of attorney, signed by you on September 23rd. Giving Jessica Chun authority to manage your real property." I looked at the signature. It looked like mine's similar loops in the M, the way the C in Chun connected to the H. But something was off. The pressure was wrong, too uniform. My real signature had variations, places where I pressed harder or lighter depending on how tired my hand was, how my arthritis was acting up. "This isn't my signature," I said. "Mrs. Chun, I'm not a handwriting expert, but that signature looks consistent with other signatures we have on file from you." "What other signatures?" He pulled out more papers. "The deed transfer, signed November 8th. The disclosure statements, the sale agreement, all signed by you, all notarized by Jennifer Martinez." I examined each one carefully. They all looked similar to my signature, but they were all wrong in the same way, too perfect, too consistent. Like someone had traced my signature and practiced it until they could reproduce it smoothly. I pulled out my purse and took out my checkbook. "This is my real signature." I showed him checks I'd written recently, my signature in my own hand. "Look at the differences. The M starts higher in these forged ones. The tail on the G in Margaret is longer. And see here?" I pointed. "My real signature has a little hook at the end of Chun because of my arthritis. My hand jerks slightly. These forged signatures don't have that." Blackwell leaned forward, studying the signatures with more interest now. He pulled out a magnifying glass from his desk drawer and examined them closely. "The differences are subtle," he admitted. "But you're right, there are differences. However, Mrs. Chun, signatures naturally vary. People don't sign their name exactly the same way every time, but they don't lose their physical characteristics. My arthritis hook is always there, always. In every signature I've made for the past 5 years. Except in these." I pulled out more evidence. I'd brought old Christmas cards I'd signed, birthday cards to David, thank you notes, all with the hook. all with the subtle imperfections of a 78-year-old hand with arthritis. Blackwell was quiet for a long moment. This is ... concerning. If what you're suggesting is true, then my firm facilitated a fraud. I need to look into this further. I don't need you to look into it further. I need you to stop the sale. I can't do that without clear evidence of fraud. What you've shown me raises questions, but it's not conclusive. You'd need a forensic document examiner to testify that these signatures are forgeries. That takes time and money. I don't have money, and I only have 38 days. Blackwell's expression softened slightly. Mrs. Chun, I'm going to be honest with you. Even if you can prove the signatures are forged, you're fighting an uphill battle. Mrs. Jessica Chun has presented what appears to be legitimate documentation. She's acted as though she has full authority. The buyers have submitted earnest money in good faith. If this sale falls through because of fraud allegations, there could be multiple lawsuits flying in every direction. Good, I said fiercely. Let there be lawsuits. Let Jessica face the consequences of what she's done. He sighed. I'm going to recommend that my firm withdraw from this transaction pending further investigation. I can't be party to a potential fraud. But Mrs. Chun, you need a lawyer. A good one. I can give you some names. I told you I don't have money for expensive lawyers. There are legal aid societies, pro bono attorneys who take cases like this. Let me make some calls. He jotted down names and numbers on his business card. In the meantime, I'm going to contact Mrs. Jessica Chun and inform her that we're suspending the sale until these questions are resolved. It wasn't everything I wanted, but it was something. A pause. A chance to gather more evidence. Thank you, I said, taking the card. Mrs. Chun? Blackwell stood as I reached the door. For what it's worth, I believe you. I've seen enough fraudulent documents in my career to recognize the signs. Your daughter-in-law is very sophisticated. She did her homework, but she made mistakes. Small ones. And if we look hard enough, we'll find them. I left his office with a small spark of hope. The sale was suspended. I had time, not much, but some. That evening I spread all my documents across the dining room table. Medical records from my flu in November. Old signatures from years of correspondence. The business card Blackwell had given me with names of legal aid attorneys. And something else I'd found while digging through my files, bank statements from the past 6 months. I'd been looking for something specific, evidence of Jessica's financial motive. And there it was, hidden in plain sight. In August, 3 large checks I'd written. Each one for $5,000, made out to cash, with my signature on them. Except I'd never written those checks. I'd never taken $15,000 in cash. My checkbook balanced perfectly because I kept meticulous records, just like Robert had taught me. These checks weren't in my register. Jessica had stolen my checkbook, forged my signature, and taken $15,000. She'd been robbing me for months, maybe longer. The house sale wasn't her first crime against me, it was just the biggest one. I took photos of the checks with my phone. More evidence, more proof of what she was. Then I called the first number on Blackwell's list. It went to voicemail. I left a message trying to sound calm and rational, not like a desperate old woman. My name is Margaret Chun. I'm the victim of fraud by a family member who's trying to steal my house. I need legal representation, and I don't have money. Please call me back. I called all 5 numbers. 4 went to voicemail. 1 disconnected line. I sat at my dining room table, surrounded by evidence of my daughter-in-law's crimes, and wondered if it would be enough. Wondered if anyone would care enough to help me. Wondered if, at the end of all this fighting, I'd still end up losing everything. But I wasn't giving up. Not yet. Not ever. 38 days left. And I was just getting started. 3 days passed with no return calls from the legal aid attorneys. I left more messages, each one sounding more desperate than the last. I was starting to lose hope again when my phone finally rang on Thursday morning. Mrs. Chun? It's Emma Rodriguez from Bay Area Legal Aid. I got your message about a family fraud case. I nearly dropped the phone. Yes, Yes, thank you for calling back. I didn't think anyone would tell me what's happening, she said, her voice crisp but not unkind. I told her everything. The whole story poured out: Jessica's helpful visits, the papers signed while I was sick, the forged signatures, the stolen checks, the house sale scheduled for January 15th. When I finished, there was silence on the other end. Mrs. Chun, this is a complex case. Elder financial abuse, forgery, fraud. It's exactly the kind of case we take, but I need to be honest with you, we're understaffed and overwhelmed. I have 43 active cases right now. My heart sank. So, you can't help me. I didn't say that, I heard papers rustling. I'm looking at my calendar. I can meet with you tomorrow afternoon at 2. Bring every document you have. Bank statements, the forged signatures, medical records from when you were sick. Everything. If the evidence is as strong as you say, I'll take your case. But Mrs. Chon, we have 35 days. That's not much time to build a case and get a court order stopping the sale. It's enough time, I said firmly. It has to be. That afternoon, Dorothy came over with a casserole. You look better, she observed. More alive. I found a lawyer. Well, a legal aid lawyer. She might help me. That's wonderful. Dorothy set the casserole on my counter. Margaret, I need to tell you something. I've been thinking about what you said about Jessica coming over all those Tuesdays with her papers. I see things from my window, you know? And I remembered something. She pulled out a small notebook from her purse. I keep track of the neighborhood goings-on. Call me nosy if you want, but I write things down. Suspicious cars, delivery times, that sort of thing. And look. She opened the notebook to a page marked September. September 23rd, 2:15 p.m., Jessica's car at Margaret's house only stayed 20 minutes. I remember because I thought it was odd. She usually stayed at least an hour. My hands trembled as I took the notebook. Dorothy, this is evidence. This proves Jessica was here on the day. I supposedly signed the power of attorney. There's more. Dorothy flipped to another page. November 8th, the day you signed those deed transfer papers while you were sick with the flu. I wrote, Jessica arrived at Margaret's house, 2:05 p.m. Left, to do 5 p.m. Margaret didn't come to. Dor must be very ill. 7 minutes. Jessica had been in my house for 7 minutes that day. 7 minutes to rush upstairs, shove papers at a feverish woman, and get forged signatures notarized later. I saw Jessica 3 weeks before that November visit too, Dorothy continued. She was sitting in her car outside your house, and she had papers spread across her steering wheel. It looked like she was practicing something. Her hand kept moving across the paper over and over in the same motion. At the time, I thought she was just working on something. But now, ... she was practicing my signature, I breathed. Dorothy, you saw her practicing my signature. I can't swear that's what she was doing, Dorothy said carefully. But I can swear I saw her sitting in her car with papers for at least 30 minutes, making repetitive hand motions. I remember because I was watching to see if she'd come to your door or just leave. She eventually left without knocking. I hugged Dorothy so hard she squeaked. You're a witness. You're an actual witness to her suspicious behavior. I'm an 83-year-old woman with bad eyesight and a reputation for being nosy, Dorothy said. But yes, I'll testify to what I saw if it helps you. The next morning, something else unexpected happened. I went to my mailbox and found it stuffed with my usual bills and junk mail, but also a small envelope with no return address. Inside was a single piece of paper, a photocopy of a document. It was a credit card statement in Jessica's name. The charges made my blood run cold. $850 to graphology experts. $1,200 to Signature Forgery 101 online course. $2,400 to something called ID Mastery Training. Someone had sent me proof that Jessica had paid for training in how to forge signatures and create fake identification documents. But who? My phone rang. Unknown number. I answered cautiously. Hello, Mrs. Chun? A woman's voice, young, nervous. Please don't try to trace this call. I can't tell you who I am. But I work at ... at a place where I've seen documents related to your case. And I've seen other documents too. Documents that weren't in the official file. Who are you? I can't say. But I'm sending you copies of things I think you should have. Things that prove what she did. I feel terrible about what's happening to you. My grandmother was scammed by a family member too, and nobody helped her. She lost everything. I can't let that happen to you. The credit card statement, was that from you? Yes, there's more coming. Check your mailbox every day. And Mrs. Chun? Be careful. Jessica Chun is dangerous. She's done this before. What do you mean she's done this before? But the line was dead. I stared at the credit card statement in my shaking hands. Jessica had studied how to forge signatures. She'd paid for professional training in fraud. This wasn't some impulsive act, it was planned, calculated, practiced. And according to my mysterious caller, I wasn't her first victim. That afternoon, I met with Emma Rodriguez in her cramped office at Bay Area Legal Aid. She was younger than I expected, maybe 35, with dark hair pulled back in a ponytail and eyes that looked perpetually tired. But when I showed her my evidence, those tired eyes sharpened. "This is good," she murmured, examining Dorothy's notebook. Witness testimony about suspicious behavior, the credit card charges showing premeditation, the signature analysis you did with Mr. Blackwell. She looked up at me. "Mrs. Chun, I'm taking your case. But I need you to understand, this is going to get ugly. When we file an emergency injunction to stop the sale, Jessica will fight back hard. She'll probably double down on the claims that you're mentally incompetent. She might even try to have you declared unable to manage your own affairs. Let her try," I said. "I'm not incompetent, and I'm not going down without a fight." Emma smiled, a real smile, the first warmth I'd seen from her. "Good, because we're going to need that fire. Now, tell me about this anonymous informant who's sending you documents." I told her about the phone call, the warning that Jessica had done this before. Emma's expression darkened. "If we can prove prior bad acts, that strengthens our case significantly. But anonymous documents are tricky in court. We need to verify their authenticity. How do we do that? We investigate Jessica's past. Did she have access to other elderly people, other victims? We need to dig into her history before she married your son." I realized I knew almost nothing about Jessica's life before David. Where she grew up, where she worked, whether she had family. She'd always been vague about her past, changing the subject when asked direct questions. At the time, I'd thought she was just private. Now I wondered what she was hiding. "I'll find out," I said. "Whatever it takes, I'll find out who she really is." Emma gathered the documents into a folder. "I'm filing for an emergency hearing. We'll request a forensic examination of the signatures and a temporary restraining order to stop the sale pending investigation. We might get a hearing within 2 weeks." 2 weeks. That would leave about 3 weeks until the scheduled closing date. It was tight. So tight. But it was a chance. I left Emma's office feeling something I hadn't felt in weeks. Hope. Real, tangible hope. I had a lawyer, I had witnesses, I had evidence. I wasn't alone in this fight anymore. That night, I checked my mailbox again. Another envelope, no return address. Inside was a newspaper clipping from 6 years ago, an obituary for a woman named Helen Thornton, survived by her daughter Margaret Thornton and son-in-law Richard Chun. Wait, Richard Chun? Could that be related to Jessica somehow? And why would my mysterious informant send me this? At the bottom of the clipping, someone had written in pen, "Ask about Helen's house." I couldn't sleep that night. The obituary for Helen Thornton sat on my nightstand, and I kept turning on the lamp to read it again. Margaret Thornton and Richard Chun. Was Richard related to Jessica? Was this Jessica's previous identity? A different married name? At 6 in the morning, I gave up on sleep and went to my computer. I searched for Helen Thornton and Margaret Thornton and Richard Chun. After an hour of digging through search results, I found something that made my stomach drop. A court case from 5 years ago. Margaret Thornton versus Richard Chun and Jessica Chun estate dispute. The case summary was brief. Helen Thornton's daughter Margaret had sued her brother Richard and his wife Jessica, claiming they had manipulated their elderly mother into signing over her house before her death. The case had been settled out of court. Terms confidential. Jessica had done this before. She'd stolen from her own husband's mother. I printed everything I could find and called Emma Rodriguez the moment her office opened. I found something. Jessica did this to her first husband's family. Get me everything you have, Emma said immediately. If we can prove a pattern of elder abuse, it changes everything. I'm coming to your house in an hour. While I waited, I called information and got a number for Margaret Thornton. My hands shook as I dialed. It rang 4 times before someone answered. Hello? An older woman's voice, cautious. Is this Margaret Thornton? Helen Thornton's daughter? A long pause. Who is this? My name is Margaret Chun. I'm calling because I believe Jessica Chun, who was married to your brother Richard, now married to my son. And she's doing to me what she did to your mother. The silence on the other end was so complete, I thought the call had dropped. Then, oh my God, she found another victim. Please, I said, my voice breaking. Please tell me what happened to your mother. Margaret Thornton's story poured out like poison from a wound. Jessica had married her brother Richard 7 years ago. Shortly after the wedding, Jessica had started visiting Margaret's mother, Helen, regularly, helping with finances and paperwork. Within 2 years, Helen had signed over her house to Richard and Jessica. 6 months later, Helen died. Suddenly, unexpectedly, from what doctors said was a stroke. But my mother was healthy, Margaret said, her voice bitter. She walked 3 miles every day. She had no history of heart disease or high blood pressure. And then suddenly, she's dead, and Richard and Jessica own her house. When I challenged it, they produced all these documents, power of attorney, deed transfers, everything legal and notarized. My lawyer said I couldn't prove coercion or fraud without concrete evidence. Did you settle? They gave me $50,000 to drop the case and sign an NDA. $50,000 for a house worth $400,000. I took it because I couldn't afford to keep fighting and because, double quotes, she paused, because Richard was my brother. I didn't want to destroy him, even though I knew Jessica was the one behind it all. I thought maybe she'd manipulated him too. What happened to Richard? They divorced 2 years ago. Jessica got half of everything in the settlement, including half the value of my mother's house. She walked away with over $200,000. And Richard killed himself 6 months after the divorce. I felt like I'd been punched in the chest. Oh my God. The note he left said he couldn't live with what he'd done to our mother, that Jessica had convinced him it was the right thing to do, that Helen wanted them to have the house, that it was all legal and proper. But after the divorce, he realized he'd been manipulated. Used. He couldn't forgive himself. I thought of David, my David, who was caught in Jessica's web just like Richard had been. Would this end the same way? Would Jessica destroy my son too? Mrs. Thornton, I need you to testify about what Jessica did to your mother. I need you to break the NDA. If I break the NDA, I have to return the $50,000. I don't have that money anymore. I used it to pay off my mother's medical bills and funeral expenses. My lawyer can help with that. Please, if you don't come forward, Jessica will get away with this again. And there will be other victims, other families destroyed. I heard Margaret crying softly on the other end. I should have fought harder for my mother. I should never have signed that NDA. I've regretted it every single day for 5 years. Then help me now. Help me stop her. Give me your lawyer's number, Margaret said finally. I'll talk to her. I'll testify. Jessica Chun destroyed my family. I won't let her destroy yours too. When Emma arrived at my house, I gave her everything: the obituary, the court records, Margaret Thornton's phone number. Emma's face grew harder as she read through the materials. "This is exactly what we needed," she said. "Evidence of prior bad acts, a pattern of behavior, a previous victim willing to testify. Mrs. Chun, we have a real case now. A strong case. How long until the hearing?" I filed the emergency motion yesterday. The judge scheduled it for next Monday, December 19th. That's 11 days from now, 11 days to prepare, 27 days until the scheduled closing. The timeline was so tight, it felt like a noose around my neck. "What do we need to do?" I asked. Emma pulled out a yellow legal pad. "First, I'm ordering a forensic document examination of the signatures. I know an expert who can do a rush job. I too $2,000. I don't have. The court can order it paid from the estate if we win. You'll need to reimburse it later, but for now, I'll advance the cost from our emergency fund. Second, I'm deposing Jessica and her notary, Jennifer Martinez. Third, I need you to get a cognitive evaluation from a doctor to prove you're mentally competent." A cognitive evaluation? "Jessica's going to argue that you signed these documents willingly but don't remember because of dementia or cognitive decline. We need medical proof that you're of sound mind. Can you get an appointment with your doctor this week?" I thought of Dr. Patterson, who'd been my physician for 20 years. "I'll call him today." "Good. And Mrs. Chun?" Emma looked at me seriously. "You should prepare yourself for the possibility that your son will testify against you. Jessica will almost certainly put him on the stand to say you've been forgetful, confused, incompetent. It's going to hurt. I'd already lost David to Jessica's lies. Hearing him testify against me in court would just make it official." "I understand," I said quietly. Over the next week, I lived in a state of controlled chaos. I had my cognitive evaluation with Dr. Patterson, who declared me sharp as a tack, no signs of dementia or cognitive impairment. I gave a deposition to Emma, recounting every detail of Jessica's manipulation. I met with the forensic document examiner, who spent 2 hours analyzing the signatures and declared them highly suspicious, with multiple indicators of forgery. Dorothy gave her statement about what she'd witnessed. Margaret Thornton flew in from Arizona to give her deposition, reliving the trauma of her mother's case. And through it all, more anonymous envelopes appeared in my mailbox, copies of Jessica's bank statements showing large cash deposits around the time of Helen's death. Records of Jessica changing her name twice before marrying David. Even a police report from 10 years ago about suspected elder abuse that had never been prosecuted. My mysterious informant was giving me everything I needed to destroy Jessica. 3 days before the hearing, I got a call from David. I hadn't heard his voice in 3 weeks. "Mom, you need to stop this." He sounded exhausted. "Jessica's lawyer says you're making false accusations that could ruin her life. He says you could be sued for defamation. Why are you doing this?" "Because she's stealing my house, David. Because she's a con artist who's manipulated you just like she manipulated Richard Chun." "Who's Richard Chun?" "Her first husband. The one whose mother she defrauded. The one who killed himself after realizing what she'd made him do." "Did Jessica tell you she was married before? Did she tell you about Helen Thornton?" Silence. "Then, you're making things up now." "Jessica was never married before. Check the court records, David. It's all public. She was Jessica Chun before she ever met you. That was Richard's last name. She kept it after the divorce because it was convenient for her next con." "I can't listen to this." David's voice cracked. "You're my mother. I love you. But you're tearing this family apart with paranoid delusions. Jessica thinks you need psychiatric help. I'm sure she does. It's easier to steal from someone if everyone thinks they're crazy." "I'll see you in court on Monday," David said. "I'm testifying for Jessica. I'm going to tell the judge that you've been declining for months, that you're not capable of managing your own affairs, that this whole lawsuit is proof of your deteriorating mental state. Then you'll be lying. Or you'll be repeating Jessica's lies. Either way, you'll have to live with it. I hung up before he could respond. I sat in my kitchen and cried for the son I'd lost, the family that Jessica had destroyed, the trust that could never be rebuilt. But I didn't quit. 30 days until closing. 3 days until the hearing that would decide everything. I was ready to fight. The weekend before the hearing, I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, could barely function. I kept replaying David's words. I'm testifying for Jessica. My own son was going to stand in court and call me incompetent. The betrayal cut deeper than anything Jessica had done. Saturday morning, I sat at my kitchen table with a pen and blank paper. I needed to reach David one more time before Monday. Not with anger or accusations, but with truth. With love. I started writing. My dearest David, by the time you read this, we'll have faced each other in court. You'll have said things about me, things Jessica has convinced you are true. Things that will break my heart, but won't break my resolve. I'm not writing to change your mind about the hearing. I know Jessica has poisoned you against me too thoroughly for a letter to fix that. I'm writing because I'm your mother, and I need you to know some things, whether you believe them now or ever. I remember the day you were born. February 14th, 1983, Valentine's Day. You came 3 weeks early, and your father was terrified, but you were perfect. 7 pounds, 2 ounces of perfect. You had his eyes and my stubborn chin. The nurse put you in my arms, and I promised you I would always protect you, always love you, always tell you the truth. I've kept that promise your whole life. I'm keeping it now. Jessica is not who you think she is. I know you love her. I know you've built a life with her. I know hearing the truth about her feels like I'm attacking your marriage, your choices, your judgment. But son, loving someone doesn't mean you have to be blind to who they really are. Before she met you, Jessica was married to a man named Richard Chun. She and Richard defrauded his mother, Helen Thornton, stealing her house through the same method she's using on me now. The helpful visits, the papers signed during vulnerable moments, the forged signatures. Richard's sisters sued them but settled out of court. 6 months after his divorce from Jessica, Richard killed himself. He left a note saying he couldn't live with what he'd done to his mother. I know you don't want to believe this. I know it's easier to think your mother is confused, paranoid, declining mentally. But David, I have court records. I have testimony from Richard's sister. I have proof of Jessica's pattern of elder abuse. And I have something else, evidence I haven't even shown my lawyer yet because I wanted you to see it first. Remember when you were 16 and you stole $40 from my purse to buy concert tickets? You lied about it at first, but the guilt ate at you until you confessed. You cried and apologized and promised to never lie to me again. Do you remember what I told you? I said, David, I always knew you took the money, but I waited for you to tell me the truth because I needed to know what kind of man you were becoming. A man who makes mistakes but takes responsibility for them is a good man. A man who lies to cover his mistakes will never be happy. You became a good man, David. You take responsibility. You tell the truth. You have integrity. So I'm asking you now, before you testify against me in court, before you help Jessica steal everything your father and I built, search for the truth yourself. Don't take her word for it. Don't take my word for it. Look at the evidence. Talk to Richard Chun's sister. Request the court records from Helen Thornton's case. Examine the signatures on those documents with your own accountant's eye for detail. If you investigate honestly and still believe I'm wrong, then testify against me. I'll accept it. I'll know I raised a son who follows his conscience, even when it's hard. But if you testify without even looking for the truth, if you blindly support Jessica because it's easier than questioning her, then you're not the man I raised. You're not the man your father died believing you were. I'm not asking you to choose between Jessica and me. I'm asking you to choose truth over lies, justice over theft, right over wrong. Whatever happens on Monday, whatever you decide to do, I want you to know I love you. I have always loved you. I will always love you. Even if you testify against me, even if I lose my house, even if we never speak again, you are my son. Nothing Jessica says or does can change that. Nothing you say or do can change that. But I will not stop fighting for what's right. Your father taught me that. He taught you that too. I hope you remember. With all my love, Mom, P.S. Your father's last words to me were about you. He said, "Make sure David knows I'm proud of him." I told him you knew. I told him every day. But son, your father would not be proud of you defending a woman who's stealing from his widow. He would not be proud of you calling your mother incompetent without even investigating whether it's true. Please don't let this be the man you become. I sealed the letter in an envelope and drove to David and Jessica's house. I knew they wouldn't be home. Jessica had a hair appointment on Saturday mornings, and David usually went to the gym. I left the letter in their mailbox. I didn't know if David would read it. I didn't know if it would change anything, but I'd done what a mother does. I'd told my child the truth and hoped it would be enough. Sunday, I went to church for the first time since Robert's funeral. I wasn't particularly religious, but I needed something bigger than myself to lean on. I sat in the back pew and prayed, not for God to fix this, but for strength to face whatever came next. After the service, an elderly priest approached me. "You look troubled, my child." I almost laughed at being called my child at 78 years old. But his eyes were kind, so I told him a condensed version of my story. "And your son?" he asked gently. "He believes the wife over you?" "Yes, that must hurt terribly." "It does." The priest sat down beside me. "I've been a priest for 53 years. I've seen many families torn apart by greed, by lies, by manipulation. And I've learned something. The truth is, like water. You can try to hold it back, dam it up, redirect it, but eventually it finds its way through. The truth always surfaces, but what if it surfaces too late? What if I lose everything before the truth comes out? Then you rebuild," he said simply, "with nothing but truth and integrity. Those are foundations that last. Houses can be replaced. Money can be earned. But once you compromise your integrity to save material things, you've lost something that can never be replaced." I thought about that all the way home. He was right. Even if I lost the house, I'd still have my truth. I'd still have my integrity. Jessica could steal my property, but she couldn't steal who I was. That night, my phone rang. David's number. My heart leaped. "Hello?" Silence. Then, "Mom, I read your letter." "David, don't talk. Just listen." His voice was strange, tight, controlled, like he was barely holding himself together. "I went to the county clerk's office yesterday. I pulled the records from Helen Thornton's case. I saw Richard Chun's name. I saw Jessica's name. I held my breath. She told me she'd never been married before. She told me I was her first husband. Why would she lie about that? Because the truth would have revealed what she is," I said softly. "A con artist. A thief. I don't... ... His voice broke. I don't know what to believe anymore. I've been married to her for 5 years. 5 years, and I don't know who she really is. David, come home. Come to the house. Let me show you everything I've found, all the evidence. You're an accountant. You know how to read financial documents. Look at them yourself." A long pause. "Jessica can't know I'm talking to you. She's been watching me closely since the letter arrived. She went through my phone this morning. She's scared of something, Mom. I can feel it. Come tonight, after she's asleep. I'll leave the back door unlocked." "Okay," he whispered. "Okay. I'll be there at midnight." He hung up. I sat in the darkness of my living room, hope and fear warring in my chest. Was David finally seeing the truth? Or was this another manipulation, Jessica sending him to find out what evidence I had? At midnight, I heard the back door open quietly. David appeared in the doorway of the living room, and in the lamplight, he looked like he'd aged 10 years. His eyes were red, his face haggard. "Show me," he said. "Show me everything." I showed him. For 3 hours, we sat at the dining room table while I walked him through every piece of evidence. The forged signatures, Dorothy's testimony, the forensic document analysis, Margaret Thornton's deposition, the credit card charges proving Jessica had taken courses in signature forgery, Richard Chun's suicide note, which Margaret had provided. David examined each document with his accountant's precision, saying nothing, his face growing paler with each revelation. Finally, he pushed back from the table and put his head in his hands. "Oh, God. Oh, my God. What has she done? What have I helped her do?" "You didn't know," I said, touching his shoulder. "I should have known." He looked up at me, tears streaming down his face. "You're my mother. I should have believed you. I should have questioned her. But she was so convincing, so concerned about you, so... I thought you were getting old, getting confused, and I needed to protect her from your accusations. God, Mom, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." I pulled my son into my arms like I used to when he was small and hurt. He sobbed against my shoulder, and I cried too, for the pain Jessica had caused, for the trust that had been broken, for the time we'd lost. "What do I do?" David asked finally. "The hearing is tomorrow. She expects me to testify that you're incompetent. You tell the truth," I said. "Whatever that truth is. I won't ask you to lie, even for me." David pulled back and looked at me with Robert's eyes I'd loved for 42 years. "The truth is that you're the strongest, smartest woman I know, and I was a fool to ever doubt you." David left at 3 in the morning after we'd gone through every document one more time. He needed to go home before Jessica woke up and found him gone. Before he left, he hugged me tightly. "I'm going to make this right, Mom. I promise. Just be careful," I warned him. "Jessica is dangerous when she's cornered. Don't let her know you figured her out. I won't." He paused at the door. "Mom? Thank you for not giving up on me." "Never," I said. "I would never give up on you." I watched him drive away into the darkness, then went inside and finally allowed myself to sleep. For the first time in weeks, I slept peacefully, knowing my son was back on my side. I woke at 8 to my phone ringing. Emma Rodriguez. "Mrs. Chun, we have a problem. Jessica's lawyer just filed a motion to postpone the hearing. They're claiming you're mentally unfit to participate in legal proceedings and requesting a psychiatric evaluation before the case can move forward." My stomach dropped. Can they do that? They can request it. Whether the judge grants it is another matter, but if he does, we could be delayed by weeks, maybe months. And the closing date is in 26 days, I finished. If the hearing is postponed, the sale goes through before we can stop it. Exactly. We need to be at the courthouse by 9. We're going to fight this motion hard. Bring your cognitive evaluation from Dr. Patterson. We'll argue that you've already been medically cleared and don't need a psychiatric evaluation. I got dressed in the same navy suit I'd worn to Blackwell's office. My hands shook as I buttoned it. This was it, the day that would determine everything. If Jessica's motion was granted, I'd lose the house. If it was denied, we'd proceed to the hearing. Everything balanced on a knife's edge. Dorothy drove me to the courthouse. "You look terrified," she observed. "I am terrified." "Good. Fear means you care. It means you're fighting for something that matters." She patted my hand. "Robert would be so proud of you, fighting like this, not letting them win." The courthouse was an imposing building of gray stone and marble columns. Emma met me at the entrance carrying 2 heavy briefcases. The hearing on the motion is in Judge Catherine Morrison's chambers at 9:30. She's tough, but fair. I've appeared before her before. We went through security and took the elevator to the 4th floor. In the hallway outside the courtroom, I saw them, Jessica and her lawyer, a sharp-faced man in an expensive suit. Jessica looked perfect, as always. Perfectly coiffed hair, perfectly tailored dress, perfectly practiced expression of concern. When she saw me, she approached. Emma put a hand on my arm, warning me not to engage, but Jessica came right up to us. "Margaret," she said, her voice dripping with false sympathy, "I'm so sorry it's come to this. If you'd just accepted help when we first offered it, none of this would be necessary. It's not too late. Drop the lawsuit. Agree to the assisted living facility we've chosen, and we can make all of this go away. You can live out your remaining years in comfort and care." "Get away from my client," Emma said coldly. Jessica's mask slipped for just a second, and I saw the real her, the predator beneath the concerned daughter-in-law act. "You're going to lose, Margaret. You're going to lose everything. And David will finally be free of your manipulation, Ms. Chun. Step back now, or I'll file a harassment complaint," Emma said. Jessica's lawyer pulled her away, whispering urgently in her ear. She shot me one last venomous look before disappearing into the courtroom. "She's rattled," Emma said quietly. "That outburst wasn't smart. She's losing control." At 9:30, we were called into Judge Morrison's chambers. It was a wood-paneled room lined with law books, dominated by a massive desk. Judge Morrison was a woman in her 60s with steel-gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. "Let's make this quick," she said, settling into her chair. "I've reviewed the motion to postpone filed by Ms. Jessica Chun's counsel. Mr. Hartford, you have 5 minutes to make your case." Jessica's lawyer stood. "Your Honor, we have serious concerns about Mrs. Margaret Chun's mental competency. She's making wild accusations against my client, accusations of fraud, forgery, and theft. These accusations are not based in reality but appear to be symptoms of cognitive decline, possibly dementia. We have documentation of Mrs. Chun's declining mental state over the past 6 months. Forgotten conversations, repeated questions, confusion about basic financial matters. We respectfully request a full psychiatric evaluation before these proceedings continue. Mrs. Rodriguez?" Judge Morrison turned to Emma. Emma stood, and I could hear the steel in her voice. "Your Honor, this motion is nothing but a delay tactic. Mrs. Chun has already been evaluated by her physician of 20 years, Dr. James Patterson. I have his report here." She handed papers to the judge. "Jessica Chun herself, the very person accused of fraud. These are self-serving documents with no independent verification, Your Honor," Mr. Hartford interrupted. "The fact that Mrs. Chun believes her own daughter-in-law, woman who has shown her nothing but kindness and support, is engaged in an elaborate fraud scheme, is itself evidence of paranoid delusions, or evidence that the daughter-in-law actually is engaged in fraud," Judge Morrison said dryly. She'd been reading through Dr. Patterson's report. "Mr. Hartford, this medical evaluation is quite thorough and recent, dated just 1 week ago. Mrs. Chun scored in the 97th percentile for her age group on cognitive function tests. Unless you have actual medical evidence, not just notes from the accused party, I see no reason to delay these proceedings for a psychiatric evaluation." My heart surged with hope. "Your Honor, we can provide testimony from Mrs. Chun's own son about her declining state. You can provide that testimony at the hearing tomorrow," Judge Morrison interrupted. "Motion to postpone is denied. We'll proceed as scheduled. 9 a.m. sharp tomorrow morning, courtroom 4B. And Mr. Hartford? Tell your client that approaching the opposing party in the courthouse hallway to make threats is inappropriate and will not be tolerated. If it happens again, I'll hold her in contempt." She banged her gavel. "We're done here. We filed out of the judge's chambers. I was shaking, but this time from relief. We'd won the first battle. The hearing would proceed tomorrow. In the hallway, I saw David standing by the window, looking out at the city. He wasn't with Jessica. He was alone. When he saw me, he walked over. "Mom, I need to tell you something." He glanced around to make sure Jessica wasn't watching. "Jessica doesn't know I'm here. I told her I had a client meeting. But I needed to see you before tomorrow. David, I'm not testifying for her," he said quietly. "I'm going to tell the judge the truth. About everything. About the documents I reviewed. About Richard Chun. About the lies she told me. She's going to hate me for it. Our marriage is over. But I can't be part of this anymore. I can't help her steal from you." I grabbed his hands. "Are you sure? David, this is going to destroy your marriage." "My marriage was built on lies," he said, his voice breaking. "She never loved me. She married me to get access to you, to your house, to the money. I was just a tool, and I was too blind to see it. I'm so sorry, son. Don't be sorry. Be ready for tomorrow, because when I testify, Jessica is going to fight back hard. Her lawyer is going to tear into me, into you, into everyone. It's going to be brutal, I know." I squeezed his hands. "But we have the truth. That has to count for something." Emma approached us. "Mrs. Chun, we should go. We have a lot of preparation to do for tomorrow." I hugged David one more time. "Be careful going home, I will. I love you, Mom. I love you too." I spent the rest of the day in Emma's office, going over testimony, reviewing documents, preparing for every possible attack Jessica's lawyer might make. Emma drilled me like a prosecutor, asking the hardest questions, poking holes in my story, making me defend every claim. "Tomorrow, Mr. Hartford is going to try to make you look confused, forgetful, vindictive," Emma said. "He's going to suggest you're a bitter old woman who can't accept that your son chose his wife over you. You need to stay calm, stay focused, and stick to the facts. Can you do that?" "Yes," I said firmly. "I can do that." At 6 p.m., Emma finally let me go home. "Get some sleep tonight. Real sleep. Tomorrow is going to be the hardest day of your life." Dorothy was waiting in the courthouse parking lot to drive me home. On the way, we passed my house, my beautiful house with its blue shutters and the garden Robert and I had planted together. 26 days until closing. One day until the hearing that would decide if I got to keep it. That evening, another anonymous envelope appeared in my mailbox. Inside was a single sheet of paper, a bank statement showing a wire transfer from Jessica's account to someone named J. Martinez for $5,000, dated 2 days before Jessica brought me those insurance papers to sign. Jessica had paid the notary. Jennifer Martinez hadn't been an innocent dupe, she'd been a paid accomplice. I called Emma immediately. "I have proof that Jessica paid Jennifer Martinez before the documents were signed. She bribed the notary." Emma's sharp intake of breath told me everything. "That's a felony. Bring that document tomorrow. Mrs. Chun, I think we're going to win this." I went to bed that night with cautious hope. I had my son back. I had evidence. I had the truth. Tomorrow, in front of a judge, I would fight for everything Robert and I had built together, and I would not lose. Have you ever prepared for the most important day of your life, knowing that everything depended on what happened next? How did you handle the fear and pressure? Share your experiences of facing crucial moments. I woke at 5 a.m. on Monday, December 19th, the day that would determine my fate. I couldn't eat breakfast. My stomach was twisted in knots. I dressed carefully in my navy suit again, pinned on the brooch Robert had given me for our 30th anniversary, and looked at myself in the mirror. "Give me strength," I whispered to Robert's memory. "Help me fight for what's ours." Emma picked me up at 7:30. "Ready?" she asked. "As ready as I'll ever be." The courthouse was already busy when we arrived. Emma led me to courtroom 4B, a formal space with high ceilings and dark wood paneling. The judge's bench loomed at the front, imposing and final. This was where my future would be decided. Jessica was already there with Mr. Hartford, sitting at the defendant's table. She looked composed, confident, like a woman who knew she was going to win. When our eyes met, she smiled, that cold, triumphant smile I'd seen through my window weeks ago. David arrived at 8:45 alone. Jessica's head snapped toward him, confusion crossing her face. He was supposed to be sitting with her, supporting her. Instead, he walked to our side of the courtroom and sat in the row behind Emma and me. Jessica leaned over and whispered urgently to Mr. Hartford. He looked at David, then back at Jessica, his expression troubled. Something had shifted, and they knew it. At exactly 9 a.m., the bailiff called out, "All rise for the Honorable Judge Catherine Morrison." Judge Morrison entered and took her seat, surveying the courtroom with those sharp eyes. "Be seated. We're here for an emergency hearing in the matter of Margaret Chun versus Jessica Chun, regarding fraudulent property transfer and elder financial abuse. Mrs. Rodriguez, you filed the emergency motion. Present your case." Emma stood, and her voice rang clear and strong through the courtroom. "Your Honor, this is a case of calculated, premeditated elder abuse. The defendant, Jessica Chun, systematically manipulated her elderly mother-in-law, forged her signature on legal documents, and attempted to steal a home worth over $600,000. We have evidence of signature forgery, bribery of a notary public, and a pattern of similar crimes committed against the defendant's previous husband's family." Mr. Hartford was on his feet. "Objection, Your Honor. There's been no criminal conviction regarding any previous alleged crimes. My client, I'll allow it," Judge Morrison said. "This is a civil hearing, not a criminal trial. Evidence of prior bad acts is relevant to establishing pattern and intent." "Continue, Mrs. Rodriguez." Emma presented our evidence methodically, the forensic document analysis showing the forged signatures, Dorothy's testimony about Jessica's suspicious behavior, my medical records proving I was sick with fever when I supposedly signed the deed transfer, Dr. Patterson's cognitive evaluation. Each piece of evidence was like a nail in Jessica's coffin. Then Emma called her first witness. The petitioner calls Margaret Thornton to the stand. Richard Chun's sister walked to the witness stand with her head held high. She was sworn in, and Emma began her questioning. "Miss Thornton, please tell the court about your relationship to the defendant, Jessica Chun." Margaret Thornton's voice was steady, strong. "Jessica Chun was married to my brother, Richard Chun. During that marriage, she and my brother defrauded my elderly mother, Helen Thornton, stealing her house through forged signatures and manipulation. My mother died shortly after the house was transferred. 6 months after divorcing Jessica, my brother killed himself because he couldn't live with what he'd done." A murmur ran through the courtroom. Jessica's face had gone white. "Objection," Mr. Hartford shouted. "This testimony is prejudicial and irrelevant." "Overruled," Judge Morrison said, her eyes fixed on Margaret Thornton with intense interest. "I want to hear this. Continue, Miss Thornton." Margaret told the whole story, how Jessica had gained Helen's trust, how she'd manipulated Richard, how the house had been stolen, how the family had been destroyed. When she finished, there were tears on her face, but her voice never wavered. "Thank you, Miss Thornton," Emma said. "Your witness, Mr. Hartford." Mr. Hartford approached the stand, but his earlier confidence had evaporated. "Miss Thornton, you signed a non-disclosure agreement about these allegations, did you not?" "I did, and I'm breaking it today because I won't let Jessica Chun destroy another family. You're aware you could face legal consequences for breaking that NDA? I don't care. Some things are more important than money or legal agreements. Like the truth." Mr. Hartford had no more questions. Margaret Thornton stepped down, and I caught her eye. She nodded at me. We were warriors in the same battle. Emma called witness after witness. Dorothy, describing what she'd seen from her window. Doctor, Patterson, confirming my mental competency. The forensic document examiner, explaining in technical detail how he knew the signatures were forged. Then Emma dropped her bombshell. Your Honor, I'd like to enter into evidence a bank statement showing a wire transfer of $5,000 from Jessica Chon's account to Jennifer Martinez, the notary public who allegedly witnessed Mrs. Chon's signatures. This transfer occurred 2 days before the documents in question were signed. She handed the statement to the judge. Judge Morrison's eyebrows rose as she examined it. Mrs. Rodriguez, are you alleging that the notary was bribed? Yes, Your Honor. We believe Jennifer Martinez was paid to fraudulently notarize forged signatures. Mr. Hartford was pale now. Your Honor, we were not provided with this evidence during discovery because we only received it last night, Emma said. I've provided a copy to opposing counsel this morning. Judge Morrison studied the bank statement. Mr. Hartford, do you have an explanation for this $5,000 payment to the notary? Mr. Hartford conferred urgently with Jessica in whispers. Jessica was shaking her head, her perfect composure finally cracking. Your Honor, my client states that the payment was for notary services rendered over several months, $5,000 for notary services. Judge Morrison's skepticism was evident. That seems excessive, Counselor. Your Honor, I'd like to call Jennifer Martinez to the stand, Emma said. She's present in the courthouse under subpoena. I hadn't known Jennifer would be here. Emma hadn't told me. But there she was, being led into the courtroom by the bailiff, looking terrified. Jennifer Martinez was sworn in. Emma approached her gently. Ms. Martinez, you notarized several documents for Jessica Chun related to Margaret Chun's property, correct? Yes. Her voice was barely audible. Were you paid $5,000 by Jessica Chun? Jennifer's eyes filled with tears. Yes. What were you paid for? A long silence. Jennifer looked at Jessica, who was staring at her with barely contained fury. Then, Jennifer looked at me, at my lined face, my hopeful eyes, my desperate need for justice. I was paid to notarize documents without Mrs. Chun being present, Jennifer said, her voice breaking. Jessica Chun brought me papers with signatures already on them. She told me Mrs. Chun had signed them but was homebound and couldn't come in person. I knew it was wrong. I knew I shouldn't do it. But I needed the money, and Jessica was so convincing. She said she had power of attorney, that everything was legal. I didn't ask enough questions. I just ... I stamped the documents. The courtroom erupted. Judge Morrison banged her gavel. Order! Emma let the revelation sink in, then asked, So to be clear, Miss Martinez, you never actually witnessed Margaret Chun sign these documents? No, I never met Mrs. Chun until today. Thank you, Miss Martinez. No further questions. Mr. Hartford stood for cross-examination, but what could he say? His client's paid notary had just admitted to fraud. Ms. Martinez, my client told you she had power of attorney, correct? Yes. So you believed you were acting legally? I wanted to believe that. But I knew something was wrong. I knew I shouldn't have done it. Mr. Hartford sat down heavily. He had nothing. Emma's final witness was David. My son walked to the stand, and I could see the pain in his face. The pain of a man about to destroy his marriage but save his integrity. Mr. David Chun, you're married to the defendant, Jessica Chun, correct? Yes. His voice was hoarse. And you initially supported her claims that your mother was mentally incompetent? Yes. I believed my wife. I thought my mother was confused, declining. Jessica showed me notes she'd kept about my mother's supposed memory problems. She was very convincing. What changed your mind? David looked at me, his eyes full of tears. My mother sent me a letter. It challenged me to investigate the truth myself. So I did. I pulled court records from Jessica's previous marriage. I examined the signature evidence. I looked at the bank statements. And I realized... His voice broke. I realized my wife had been lying to me for years. About everything. She married me to get access to my mother. She planned this from the beginning. Jessica stood up, fury on her face. You bastard! After everything I've done for you, sit down, Miss Chun. Judge Morrison's voice cracked like a whip. One more outburst and I'll have you removed from this courtroom. Jessica sat, but her mask was completely gone now. The concerned daughter-in-law had vanished, replaced by something cold and vicious. Emma continued. Mr. Chun, based on your investigation, do you believe your mother is mentally competent? Absolutely. My mother is sharper than I am. She figured out what Jessica was doing while I was still being manipulated by her lies. And do you believe Jessica? Chun forged your mother's signature? Yes, without question. Thank you, Mr. Chun. No further questions. Mr. Hartford had no questions for David either. What could he ask? The defendant's own husband had just testified against her. Judge Morrison looked at Mr. Hartford. Does the defense wish to present any witnesses? Mr. Hartford stood slowly. Your Honor, in light of the testimony we've heard today, I need to consult with my client about how to proceed. You have 10 minutes, Judge Morrison said. We're in recess. Have you ever watched someone's lies completely unravel in front of everyone? How did it feel to see justice beginning to take shape? Share your experiences of truth finally being heard. During the 10-minute recess, I sat with Emma while David remained in the witness area. Across the courtroom, Mr. Hartford and Jessica were having what appeared to be a heated argument. Jessica's face was red, her gestures sharp and angry. Mr. Hartford kept shaking his head, looking more and more uncomfortable. She's losing it, Emma whispered to me. She knows it's over. Dorothy squeezed my shoulder from the row behind us. Almost there, Margaret, almost there. When Judge Morrison returned, Mr. Hartford stood. Your Honor, I request permission to withdraw as counsel for the defendant. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Judge Morrison's eyes narrowed. On what grounds, Mr. Hartford? Your Honor, my client has. Information has come to light that makes it impossible for me to continue representation in good conscience. I believe there may have been misrepresentations made to this court, and I cannot be party to— Your Honor! Jessica jumped to her feet. I don't need him. I can speak for myself. Judge Morrison studied Jessica with an expression that could have frozen fire. Ms. Chun, I strongly advise you to retain counsel before proceeding. I don't need counsel. I need to tell my side of the story. Everyone's been lying about me, Margaret. That woman from Arizona. Even my own husband who's been turned against me. Let me tell the truth. This was a mistake. Emma tensed beside me, recognizing it immediately. A lawyer would never let Jessica testify. There was too much evidence against her. But Jessica's arrogance and anger had overridden her judgment. Very well, Judge Morrison said. Mr. Hartford, you're dismissed. Miss Chun approached the witness stand. Jessica walked to the stand with her head high, defiant. She was sworn in and sat down, arranging her skirt carefully. Even now she was concerned with appearances. Judge Morrison looked at Emma. Mrs. Rodriguez, you may question the witness. Emma stood, and I saw the predator in her eyes. This was the moment she'd been waiting for. Ms. Chun, you've heard the testimony today. Multiple witnesses have stated that you forged Margaret Chun's signature on property documents. What do you have to say about these allegations? They're lies, Jessica said firmly. Margaret signed those documents willingly. I was helping her because she was becoming confused, forgetful. She would sign things and then not remember. I kept notes about her declining mental state to document what was happening. Notes that only you kept. Notes that no one else ever witnessed. Because I was the one spending time with her? I was the one who cared enough to help. Emma's voice remained calm. Let's talk about your previous marriage to Richard Chun. Did you help his mother, Helen Thornton, with her paperwork too? Jessica's jaw clenched. That situation was completely different. How so? Helen wanted to give us her house. She loved Richard. She wanted to make sure he was taken care of. And yet, Helen's daughter sued you, claiming you'd stolen the house through fraud. Margaret Thornton was jealous. She wanted the house for herself. Is that why you settled out of court? Because you were innocent? We settled because it was easier than fighting a long legal battle. Emma pulled out a document. Ms. Chun, I have Richard Chun's suicide note here. In it, he writes, and I quote, "I can't live with what Jessica made me do to my mother. She convinced me it was right, that Mom wanted it, but now I see the truth. Jessica used me to steal from my own mother, and I was too blind to see it until it was too late. Do you care to comment on that?" Jessica's face twisted with something ugly. Richard was weak. He couldn't handle the guilt of putting his mother in a home where she'd be cared for properly. That's not my fault. The callousness of her words hung in the air. Even Judge Morrison looked shocked. Let's discuss Jennifer Martinez, Emma continued. You paid her $5,000. For what? For notary services rendered over several months. Ms. Martinez testified that you paid her to notarize documents without Margaret Chun present. Was she lying? Yes. She's lying to save herself because she knows she did something wrong. You're saying everyone is lying? Margaret Chun, Margaret Thornton, Jennifer Martinez, your own husband, all lying, and only you are telling the truth. Yes. Jessica's voice rose. They're all conspiring against me because they're jealous or guilty or manipulated. Margaret Chun is a bitter old woman who can't stand that her son chose me. David's been brainwashed by his mother. That notary is covering up her own incompetence. And Richard's sister has held a grudge for years. Emma let the outburst echo through the courtroom. Then, very quietly, Ms. Chun, did you forge Margaret Chun's signature on property documents? No, she signed them herself. Even when she was sick with a 102-degree fever and barely conscious? She was lucid enough to understand what she was signing. Did you take courses in signature forgery? Did you pay for training through websites called Graphology Experts and Signature Forgery 101? Jessica's face went pale. Those were for my job. I work in real estate. I needed to understand document authentication. Really? Because according to your employment records, you've been unemployed for 3 years. Emma held up more documents. These credit card statements show charges for forgery training, identity manipulation courses, and seminars on exploiting elderly victims. Can you explain those? Jessica's mouth opened and closed. No words came out. I'll ask you one more time, Miss Chun. Did you forge Margaret Chun's signature with the intent to steal her house? The silence stretched. Jessica looked around the courtroom, met the judge, at me, at David, at all the faces staring at her with disgust and contempt. Her perfect mask had shattered completely. What remained was something desperate and vicious. Fine, she screamed. Yes, I forged her signature. She's a stupid old woman living in a house worth over $500,000 while I'm drowning in debt. She doesn't need it. She's going to die soon anyway. Why should she keep all that money locked up in property when people like me are struggling? The courtroom erupted. Judge Morrison banged her gavel repeatedly. Order! Order in this court! But Jessica wasn't done. Years of carefully constructed lies were pouring out in a toxic flood. I did it to Helen Thornton, and I'd do it again. Old people are so easy to manipulate. They're lonely. They're desperate for help. They trust family. It's their own fault for being so gullible. And Margaret, she pointed at me with a shaking finger. She was the easiest mark of all. So trusting, so grateful for my help. She practically handed me everything on a silver platter. Miss Chun, you need to stop talking. Mr. Hartford had stood up, despite having been dismissed. You're confessing to multiple felonies. I don't care anymore. Jessica was crying now, ugly tears of rage and frustration. I did everything right. I planned for months. I researched, I practiced, I was perfect. And I would have gotten away with it if it weren't for her. She glared at me. Why couldn't you just be senile like you were supposed to be? Why couldn't you just accept the assisted living facility and disappear quietly? Judge Morrison's face was stone. Ms. Chone, sit down and be silent, or I will have you forcibly removed. Jessica sat, but she was still muttering, "It's not fair. It's not fair. I did everything right. ... Double quotes." Judge Morrison turned to the court reporter. "Make sure every word of that is in the record." Then she looked at me, and for the first time, I saw compassion in those stern eyes. "Mrs. Chun, I apologize that you've had to endure this nightmare. This court finds clear and convincing evidence of fraud, elder abuse, forgery, and attempted theft. The property transfer is hereby declared null and void. Your home remains your property, Mrs. Chun." Relief washed over me so powerfully I thought I might faint. Emma grabbed my hand and squeezed it hard, but Judge Morrison wasn't finished. "Furthermore, I'm ordering an immediate investigation by the district attorney's office into potential criminal charges against Jessica Chun. Bailiff, take Miss Chun into custody pending arraignment on charges of elder abuse, fraud, forgery, and grand theft." Two bailiffs approached Jessica, who seemed to suddenly realize what was happening. "Wait, no, you can't arrest me. I have rights." "You have the right to remain silent," one bailiff said, pulling her to her feet. "I suggest you use it." As they led Jessica away in handcuffs, she looked back at David one last time. "This is your fault. You were supposed to support me. We were supposed to be a team." David's face was wet with tears, but his voice was steady. "We were never a team. I was just another mark." Jessica screamed obscenities as they took her out of the courtroom. The heavy doors closed behind her, muffling her voice. Judge Morrison addressed the courtroom. "This has been one of the most disturbing cases of elder abuse I've encountered in my 30 years on the bench. Mrs. Chun, I'm also ordering that Jessica Chun be held liable for all legal fees incurred in this matter, as well as compensatory damages for emotional distress. My clerk will work with your attorney to determine the appropriate amount." She banged her gavel one final time. "This court is adjourned." I sat there, unable to move. It was over. After weeks of terror, of fighting, of nearly losing everything, it was over. My house was safe. Jessica was going to jail. Justice had been served. Emma was hugging me. Dorothy was crying. David came over and pulled me into his arms, both of us sobbing. "I'm so sorry, Mom," he kept saying. "I'm so sorry." "You came back to the truth," I whispered. "That's all that matters." We stood in that courtroom, holding each other, while around us people filed out and normal life resumed. But nothing would ever be normal again. Jessica had destroyed so much trust, family bonds, innocence. Even victory couldn't erase all the damage she'd done. But I had my home, I had my son back, and I had proved that even a 78-year-old widow could stand up to evil and win. Robert would have been proud. So have you ever witnessed justice being served after a long battle? How did it feel when the truth finally won? Share your stories of victory over deception. Part 15. Reconstruca e. Jessica_3 months have passed since that day in court. It's March now, and the garden Robert and I planted is beginning to bloom. Again, daffodils and tulips pushing through the earth, insistent on life despite the cold winter we've endured. I'm sitting on my porch, the same porch where I sat with Robert for 40 years, drinking morning coffee and watching the neighborhood wake up. This porch, this house, these walls, they're still mine. They'll always be mine. The legal aftermath was swift and severe. Jessica was charged with 11 felonies: elder abuse, grand theft, forgery, fraud, identity theft, and bribery. Her trial is scheduled for June, but her lawyer has already approached Emma about a plea deal. Jessica will likely spend 5 to 7 years in prison. It's not enough, will never be enough for what she did to Helen Thornton, to Richard Chun, to me, to David. But it's justice. Jennifer Martinez, the notary, lost her license and received 3 years probation in exchange for testifying against Jessica. She calls me sometimes, crying, apologizing. I don't know if I'll ever forgive her, but I understand that she was another one of Jessica's victims, manipulated, exploited, used. Margaret Thornton flew back to Arizona after the trial, but we talk on the phone every week now. 2 women who survived the same predator, who refused to stay silent, who chose truth over comfort. We've become unlikely friends, bound together by trauma and triumph. The anonymous informant never revealed themselves. I've tried to find out who sent those documents, the credit card statements, the newspaper clippings, the bank records that helped build the case against Jessica. Emma thinks it was someone from Mr. Hartford's office, someone with a conscience who couldn't stomach being part of Jessica's fraud. Whoever it was, I owe them everything. But the person I think about most is David. My son is living with me now, sleeping in his childhood bedroom while he sorts out his life. The divorce from Jessica is moving forward. She tried to contest it from jail, demanding spousal support, but no judge will grant her anything. David lost 3 years of his life to Jessica's lies, but he's rebuilding. He's in therapy, working through the guilt and shame of being manipulated, learning to trust his own judgment again. Last night, we sat on this porch together, and he said something that broke my heart and healed it at the same time. Mom, I keep thinking about all the times I chose to believe her over you. All the times I dismissed your concerns, called you paranoid, treated you like you were losing your mind. How do you forgive me for that? I took his hand, the same hand I'd held when he was a little boy crossing the street, learning to ride a bike, walking into his first day of school, because you're my son. Because you came back to the truth when it mattered most. Because love means forgiving even when it hurts. He cried then, and I held him like I used to when he was small and the world seemed too big and scary. Some things don't change, even when everything else does. The house itself has become something different to me now. It's no longer just a collection of memories. It's a symbol of resistance, of refusal to be victimized, of the strength that comes when you fight for what's right. Every room tells a story now, not just of the life Robert and I built, but of the battle I fought to keep it. People ask me sometimes how I found the courage to fight back. They see a 78-year-old widow who took on a sophisticated con artist and won, and they think I must be some kind of hero. But I don't feel like a hero. I feel like someone who simply refused to let evil win. The truth is, I was terrified every single day. Terrified of losing my home, of being declared incompetent, of spending my final years in some facility, while Jessica lived in the house Robert and I built with our own hands. But terror doesn't mean you quit. Terror means you're still alive, still fighting, still believing that justice matters. I learned something important through all of this. We teach people how to treat us. For too long, I'd been the accommodating widow, the trusting mother-in-law, the woman who didn't want to make waves or cause trouble. Jessica saw that and exploited it. She counted on me being too polite, too tired, too old to fight back. She was wrong. I also learned that being old doesn't mean being helpless. Society wants us to believe that once we reach a certain age, we should step aside, accept help without question, trust that younger people know what's best for us. But age brings wisdom, experience, and a clarity about what truly matters. I'm 78 years old, and I am not invisible. I am not disposable. I am not anyone's victim. The financial recovery is ongoing. Emma filed a civil suit against Jessica for the $15,000 she'd stolen through forged checks, plus damages for emotional distress. The court awarded me $230,000, money I'll probably never collect since Jessica has nothing. But it's on the record. Her crimes are documented. She can never do this to anyone else without that record following her. I've also become something unexpected. An advocate. I give talks now at senior centers and community groups about elder financial abuse, about the warning signs, about how to protect yourself. I tell my story, all of it, even the painful parts about trusting Jessica, about being manipulated, about my own son testifying against me. People need to hear that it can happen to anyone, even to someone like me who thought she was too smart to be conned. Dorothy comes over every Tuesday for coffee now. We sit on this porch and talk about everything: the neighbors, the news, our aching joints, the garden. Last week, she said, "Margaret, I'm proud of you. Robert would be proud of you. I think he would be. I think he'd be proud that I fought for what we built together, that I didn't give up even when it seemed hopeless, that I chose truth over comfort and justice over peace." There are still hard days. Days when I see a young couple walking hand in hand and think about the life David could have had if he'd married someone genuine. Days when I look at the rooms of this house and remember signing those papers while sick with fever, trusting someone who was actively destroying me. Days when the loneliness feels crushing, and I miss Robert so much it physically hurts. But those days are balanced by moments of unexpected joy. David making Sunday dinner in the kitchen, filling the house with the smell of roasting chicken, just like his father used to. The daffodils blooming despite everything. The phone calls from other elderly people who heard my story and found the courage to fight their own battles against exploitation. Last week, a woman called me at 2 years old, convinced her nephew was stealing from her, but afraid to speak up because he was family. I told her my story. I told her that family doesn't give anyone the right to abuse you, that blood doesn't excuse theft, that love without respect isn't really love at all. "But what if I'm wrong?" she asked. "What if I ruin our relationship over a misunderstanding?" "And what if you're right?" I replied. "What if staying silent means he destroys your life? You owe it to yourself to find out the truth. You deserve to be safe in your own home, with your own money, living your own life. Age doesn't change that." She cried and thanked me. Last I heard, she'd contacted a lawyer and started investigating. Another person refusing to be a victim. Another voice added to the chorus saying, "Not anymore, never again." This morning, I received a letter from Jessica. It was forwarded from the jail where she's being held pending trial. I almost didn't open it. What could she possibly say that I'd want to hear? But curiosity won out. The letter was short. "Margaret, I'm writing to say I'm sorry. I know you won't believe me. I know I don't deserve forgiveness. But I want you to know that what I did to you, to Helen, to everyone, it was never personal. I was desperate. I had debts, problems, pressures you can't imagine. I saw opportunities and I took them. That doesn't excuse what I did, but maybe it explains it. I hope someday you can find it in your heart to forgive me. Jessica." I read it twice, then put it in the fireplace and watched it burn. She's sorry she got caught, not sorry for what she did. She wants forgiveness so she can feel better about herself, not because she's genuinely changed. Some people are beyond redemption, and Jessica Chun is one of them. But I'm not beyond healing. Day by day, I'm rebuilding the parts of me that Jessica damaged: the ability to trust, the willingness to accept help, the belief that most people are fundamentally good. It's slow work, like tending a garden that's been trampled. But growth is happening. David is healing too. Last week, he went on a date, his first since the divorce papers were filed. A woman from his office, someone kind and genuine who knows nothing about the nightmare he survived. I told him to take his time, to be careful, to trust his instincts. He promised he would. As I sit here on my porch, watching the spring morning unfold, I think about everything I've survived. Losing Robert. Nearly losing my home. Almost losing my son. Fighting a legal battle that could have destroyed me. And yet, here I am, still in my house, still myself. Still fighting, still living, still hoping. This house is more than wood and brick now. It's proof that you can face evil and win. It's evidence that the truth matters, that justice is possible, that one elderly woman with nothing but determination and integrity can stand up to sophisticated criminals and prevail. I'm 78 years old. I'm a widow, a mother, a survivor, an advocate. I'm the woman who refused to be a victim, who fought back when everyone expected her to quietly disappear, who proved that age is not weakness and that being targeted doesn't mean being defeated. My name is Margaret Chun. This is my house. This is my story. And I'm still here. This is Margaret's story, but it could be anyone's story. Elder abuse happens every day in every community to people who deserve protection and respect. If you or someone you know is being financially exploited, please speak up, get help, fight back. You are not alone, and you are not helpless. Share this story if it touched you, and remember, it's never too late to stand up for what's right. What's your biggest takeaway from Margaret's journey? Share your thoughts in the comments below.